I often hear that the masculine mind is very simple. It focuses on action and facts, not words. Is that true? Do you really listen to what we women say? Story 1. Utterly insane to suggest that men care about facts and not words. Utterly insane to suggest that men are not emotional. I do not know what planet some of these people who say this live on, but it is not this one. Story 2. I believe women are worse at communicating, especially in a relationship. Communication is the transfer of information. That's all it is. Men mean what they say. Simple and direct. It leaves little room for interpretation or miscommunication. But I have noticed that women read into it too much. Their brains force them to look for something that is not there. Their internal prism of understanding refracts that incoming information and scatters it into something that does not remotely resemble the initial information. Women do the same when they send information. They run their outbound communication through the same prism and expect the receiving party to interpret their words and incomplete information exactly the same way through the exact same prism and feel the same way. But everybody's internal prism is different, and many women cannot comprehend that or much later in life, if ever. They expect men to read between the lines, interpret, and guess correctly. It does not work like that. So that makes men better at communicating by default. Story 3. We care about words only when they mean what was said. No hints, subtext, hidden meanings, or mind reading. Just say what you mean, and people will listen. It is that simple. Story 4. This is an oversimplification. I would say that the biggest difference between how men and women think, based on my experience with women I have known compared to myself, is that women are more prone to getting stuck in circles or on normative expectations. Everything is processed through a social acceptability filter, and if the feelings they have cannot get through that filter, they get stuck. If they feel emotions they believe they cannot express without being judged, or if they experience something they feel is outside of the norm or inappropriate, they tend to ruminate until they either burn out or become upset enough to disregard social propriety. With men, emotional self-control is more the focus than aligning with arbitrary social expectations. Men tend to get more frustrated at what they are unable to do for themselves rather than at what happens to them. Being overly upset is not very productive when addressing those concerns. I think this gets reduced to we care about action and facts, not words. Because we often see women in our lives being upset over situations that are most of the time already done. They have already happened, and no steps will be taken to address them. Being upset about them is just a messy way of processing an experience. For men, if you are not going to do anything about something, then it cannot be that important. Women want to talk about what they are experiencing even if it does not translate to action, while men do not see the point in talking about anything that does not lead to action. I listen to everything women say around me or to me, but if they do not take their own problems seriously enough to address them, what am I supposed to do? Just hold on to their stressful baggage while they forget it ever happened, until it happens again because they never actually address the situation? If you have ever experienced a man who does not want to listen to your problems or tries to cut the conversation short, it is probably because at some point he was caught off guard and does not want his time wasted again. Story 5. We do listen, but then we compare what we hear to reality and focus on the important points. Women talk a lot, but they are often poor at communicating information. Saying everything that comes to mind is not the same as being a good communicator. I will use my wife as an example. The following is a real example of my wife reviewing a movie we watched recently. I liked the movie. When I saw that one scene, it reminded me of this kid I know from church. I need to call his mom about something she told me a few days ago. Oh, that reminds me. I was supposed to tell you about this thing that happened at work. Proceeds to tell a very long story about work. I need to ask my coworker if they saw that movie. What are we doing for dinner? I asked about the movie. I got 4 different topics besides her initial thoughts. I liked it. It was more stream of consciousness that started with the movie. In addition to there being an overabundance of information, there is an issue of actions matching words. I am less inclined to listen to someone say something repeatedly if I never see them take real steps to do it. For example, some of my female friends have described their version of the perfect guy for over 20 years. They then choose not to be with that guy. Then they complain to the group about how disappointed they are in the man. They stay for years despite saying they are going to leave almost monthly. When they do eventually leave, they pick another version of the same type of man. It becomes difficult to listen to what they say they want in relationships and then see them get upset when you mention that historically they have allowed more of the negative behaviors than the positive ones. Story 6. It's like this. I asked my wife what she wanted to eat for dinner. She spent 30 minutes recounting everything she had eaten in the last 3 days, briefly reviewing her mental grocery list and commenting on a coworker's lunch from last week. So I asked again, what do you want for dinner? Did I hear her? Of course, but none of what she said helped answer the question. She identified several things she did not want to eat, but nothing that she did want to eat. That's the male brain. Story 7. I, for one, will listen absolutely. However, if what is said is not matched by actions, then the words are hollow and the person is a liar. A person's true intent and desires are always played out in their actions regardless of the words spoken. Story 8. Men definitely listen to what women say, but we tend to be more literal in how we interpret things, which often conflicts with women's actions. This explains the meaning of the saying. Story 9. Men are not a monolith. For example, Albert Einstein spent more time trying to hide his pipe from his wife than you would suspect, and she always found it. People are people, brother. Story 10. We care about action and facts, not just words. I dispute this stereotype. I care about words and understand their power. Recently, I heard the claim that men are taught to weaponize their fists and women are taught to weaponize their words. Suddenly, decades of girlfriends telling me that women are much better at communication, despite watching them repeatedly use vague communication techniques to set traps, made much more sense. Story 11. That's a broad generalization of men. The truth is we are a mixed group, and societies across the world want men to fit into one simple category so they can use them and discard them when they are no longer useful. I know many men who value communication. The thing is, people in general are not good at speaking their own native language, to the point that you might as well be speaking in French while they only listen in German. You have to connect with someone to get them to listen. You have to speak their language. Our minds are complex. Many people, not just men or women, do not even understand their own language, let alone themselves. So, my mind is that of a writer and poet. One who sees beauty in the little things. One who does not necessarily take action or facts into consideration unless lived experience shows that it is the right course. Because, truth be told, life is not one track, and I am a different kind of train. Story 12. Did you say something, dear? Serious answer. People who are rude do not listen, and sometimes they target that specifically at women. There is nothing inherent to being a man that forces you to be rude. Story 13. It is not that we do not listen. We do and we care. But some women talk extensively about every little thing that happens to them, what people said, how they felt, and how somebody else felt. It is a lot of information all over the place, making it hard to keep track of. Anything short of that is quickly labeled as emotional bottling. If my code does not work one day, I feel frustrated. So I go lift weights, run, or swim to clear my mind. I will fix it the next day. It is not something I feel the need to talk about or vent emotionally. I thrive on challenge, not praise. I was in therapy that involved a lot of flattery, and I told my therapist that I understood and accepted the praise, but we had to move forward and get clear about what we wanted to try. Some of my male brain characteristics, driven by dominance and autonomy, I naturally lean toward leadership, independence, and protecting my space. More action-oriented than talk-oriented. I process by doing and moving more than by discussing feelings at length. Systemizing mindset. I tend to analyze patterns, logic, and dynamics more than emotional nuance. Clarity matters a lot. I set firm boundaries because ambiguity creates unnecessary friction. Freedom is core. I value personal freedom and do not respond well to unexpected emotional pressure or expectations. Trust is earned through time and reliability. I do not overshare quickly. Depth comes from consistency. Motivated by respect, not attention. I register competence and mutual regard more than flattery or affection. Visually driven arousal. Attraction to women is strong and physical first, emotional second. Bond through action. Loyalty and connection come from doing things together and showing up, not just words. Story 14. I have never heard that saying. Men listen to what people say. We tend to be terrible at picking up on hints, and we might immediately go into problem-solving mode if you complain to us about something. Story 15. Is that true? No. It is true for some men who say that and a few others. We are individuals. Asking if all people are the same is unwise, even if those people look similar. Do you really listen to what women say? It depends. Not everything is worth listening to. However, I am certain that women generally have similar opinions when it comes to the other side. For example, all the women who ask what birthday gift to get their husbands clearly show that they do not pay close attention to their spouse. Story 16. There is a part of truth to it. I will care more about the actions that prove your words than your words themselves. I will care more about the actions you do that show your love to me than simply saying, I love you, but I will still want both nonetheless. Also, I do not believe in feel-good talk. If you try to pep talk with stuff you don't even believe yourself, I am going to notice it by your actions too. That's the closest I can think of to how my brain works regarding that saying. It is not that your words do not matter. Your actions matter even more. Story 17. If there is any difference between my wife and me, though I don't think the differences are that great most of the time, it really comes down to the following. I am structured and very single-focused. I give my complete attention to whatever I am doing and multitask about as well as a fish rides a bike. I prefer to know exactly what needs to be done and what I will be doing up to a week in the future. I am in constant awe of the fact that my wife can mentally juggle 15 things at once and rarely drops the ball. She is also much more spontaneous than I am, and frankly, that is great because she makes me more spontaneous by proxy. Note, I am speaking specifically about myself and my wife. I cannot speak for other men and women or how they work as a pair. When listening to her, she gets my complete focus and I actively listen. Active listening is a skill and women seem to do it more naturally than men, but like any skill, you can improve it with practice. Much of communication is not just words. Tone and body language all matter. For example, if she is telling me about a conflict at work, depending on her body language, it can range from, so X was being difficult. No big deal. X is always difficult. To her body language screaming, this is actually a major problem. I hate my job and it is getting worse. Also, a pro tip for married people or those in long-term relationships. If your wife or partner says, remind me about X, put it in your phone as an alarm with a reminder. For example, remember you need to post your mom's present today or it won't get there in time for her birthday is always a winner. Also, learn to say yes more. If your wife asks, do you want to go to the farmer's market on Sunday? You might initially think probably not, since it is overpriced stuff you can get from a supermarket. However, mentally reframe it as, do you want to spend some time with me doing something I would like to do? And then saying yes makes much more sense. Story 18. This is a massive overgeneralization, but the general idea is that women take too long to tell stories. Why use many words when few words do the trick? Story 19. No, words are just as important as actions and facts. You can learn a lot about a person based on the vocabulary they use. As an attorney, I know we sometimes take 5 minutes to decide which word to use. If the average male thinks that way, it explains a lot to me. Story 20. In my humble opinion, men tend to focus more on outcomes rather than the process. Therefore, we want to be as succinct in communication as possible to drive to a successful conclusion efficiently. We prefer to solve a problem rather than go on an emotional journey. Story 21. For me personally, it is correct. It is easy to say things, hard to do. It is easy to say sorry. It is hard to prove you are. It is also easy to be kind when things are good. Story 22. I would say that, like how cats' vision is based on movement, our attention is based on movement. It is easier for us to pay attention to things that are happening than things that happened. In general, conversation is rarely about the present. Of course, we become more appreciative of things that stay still as we get older. Story 23. I would describe it as a hybrid system with a continuously variable transmission gearbox that is geared way too high. Great for the circuit and hyperfocusing, and even drag racing if I put some rocket fuel in it, but absolutely the noisiest and most inefficient machine while running electric around town and doing day-to-day tasks. I think men often do not feel their emotions and experience anhedonia. Denial is constant, and we often damage our relationships by genuinely not understanding the state of the relationship. Story 24. My brain is very literal outside of humor. For example, if a story is dragging on, I definitely get a little lost in the added details. I basically mentally summarize a story and remember a few key points, but not the whole story and its theatrics. On top of that, men are taught to suppress their words, for example, men's mental health. We usually give a person an opportunity to hear what is going on in our head, and if they abuse that, that door is closed and locked with that person permanently. All in all, we do listen to what you say, we just might interpret and think about it differently than you expect. Story 25. I appreciate actions, facts, and words, but I want straightforwardness. If you expect me to infer what you mean from what you say, I almost definitely will not. Tell me what you mean. Story 26. I often hear masculine mind is very simple. We care about action, facts, not words. Anyone summarizing masculinity or male identity that way is treating us like a hive mind or using their own standards to judge everyone else. It does not matter whether men or women say that. Like most humans with brains, I am perfectly capable of overthinking, underthinking, and wandering as needed. I take a deep breath and persevere, being stoic if that option is available, which often is these days. I am really attentive and a good listener, but also sometimes distracted or at least seeming disinterested, or genuinely disinterested. Do you not really listen to what women say? It depends on who is saying it and what they are saying. I do not have one mental rule for women and another for men. Story 27. Like most human beings, men are a bit more complex than that. We listen to everyone, including women. Story 28. Men care about words and will listen. The difference is often that we want to hear the information in the most direct way possible so it can be used to affect an outcome. When women convey information or tell a story, they tend to talk a lot. There is nothing wrong with this. It is just not an information delivery method that resonates with most men. In summary, we listen, but we wish you would get to the point before our eyes glaze over. Story 29. I just think it's my brain. It happens to be in a male heterosexual body. So, my brain likes females with nice breasts and buttocks, peas standing up, and prefers bacon cheeseburgers over weightlifting, rather than salads and Pilates. Both my wife and I find flatulence funny, so I can't blame that on being male. Story 30. Logical, linear, spatial, literal. I don't understand nor am I good at conversing about nothing. I will listen if you speak directly, for example, I am upset because of something at work today, and then explain the situation. If you just start blathering about Becky at work, I am going to tune you out. Also, make clear when switching topics. Many misunderstandings have occurred over the years because she talks about one thing, then pivots to another, and I end up confused. Finally, if you want me to do something, please ask directly instead of beating around the bush, because my brain won't process your complaining as a request to take action. Summary. I listen and respond to clear, concise, and direct communication. Story 31. We try our best to understand women. You would think that after all the time humanity has existed, we would know what we are doing, but we truly have no idea. Thanks a bunch for sticking around till the end of the video. Remember to subscribe, and until next time, stay awesome and goodbye.